The sound woke me before my alarm did, sharp, metallic, and absolutely out of place. It wasn't the usual early morning noise of neighbor kids dragging trash bins or someone revving a car engine too loudly. No, this was more purposeful, like someone assembling something they had no business assembling at 7 in the morning. I stumbled into my slippers and trudged through the hallway, rubbing the sleep out of my eyes. The clanking came again, more insistent this time, followed by a thump that rattled the frosted glass on my front door. For one irrational second, I wondered if it might be a bear, or worse, Jim from 2 houses down, who'd recently bought a set of bongos. But when I swung open the door, I realized I had underestimated the sheer absurdity the universe was capable of. 2 HOA security guards, if one could call them that without laughing, stood at my gate like they were guarding the crown jewels. Both wore matching tactical vests that seemed about 3 sizes too large, and both held clipboards with the intensity of men who'd finally found meaning in life. Behind them, a blue pop-up tent had been erected, flapping in the breeze like a surrender flag. A fold-out table sat beneath it, covered with papers, a radio, and a thermos labeled HOA Fuel in thick black marker. But the pièce de résistance was the barricade made of bright orange traffic cones arranged in a semicircle, as if my driveway had suddenly become a restricted government testing site. Guard 1 spotted me first. He straightened, puffing out his chest in a way that only accentuated how poorly his vest fit. "Good morning, Mr. Thompson. We're here on official HOA business." I blinked at them, then at the cones, then back at them. "Why are you camping at my gate? Did I miss an HOA newsletter about turning our neighborhood into a state park?" Guard 2 adjusted his sunglasses, even though the sky was a dull shade of morning gray. He said nothing, only lifted his clipboard with dramatic solemnity, like he was revealing the 10 Commandments. Guard 1 cleared his throat. "Per directive from resident Karen Whitmore, you are required to issue a formal apology for the incident." The way he said the incident made it sound like I had committed a felony, not a simple neighborly disagreement. I folded my arms. "You mean when she tried to fine me for having grass that was too green?" Guard 1 looked down at his clipboard as if verifying crucial classified information. "Correction, suspiciously green." I stared at him. "Suspicious." "My grass. Exactly." Guard 2 nodded as if this cleared everything up. For a moment, I wondered if this was some kind of prank. Maybe the neighbors got together and decided to teach me a lesson for making fun of the HOA holiday newsletter. But the tent was real, the cones were real, and the guards, well, they were certainly committed. "Let me get this straight," I said slowly. "You've blocked my driveway. You're camped at my gate, all because Karen, the woman who complained that birds were loitering in her tree, told you to come here." Guard 1's expression didn't change. "She is a respected member of the HOA. She brought oatmeal cookies to one meeting," I countered, "and they were bad." Guard 2 gasped, hand over his heart, as if I'd delivered a personal insult to his grandmother. I ran a hand down my face. "Okay, just so we're absolutely clear, you're demanding I apologize to Karen for my grass." Both guards nodded in eerie, synchronized agreement. "And until I do, you're... what? Holding my driveway hostage? We prefer the term. Temporary access control," Guard 1 said. "Uh-huh. The absurdity of it all washed over me like cold water. This wasn't just the HOA being annoying, this was the HOA crossing, a threshold into full-blown cartoon villain territory. I stepped forward, trying to push the cones aside. Guard 2 moved faster than I expected. He planted himself between me and the cones like a loyal guard dog who had been trained using only HOA bylaws and passive-aggressive emails. "Sir, please step back. This area is currently under enforcement." "Enforcement of what?" I threw my hands up. "Grass vibrancy laws?" Guard 1 checked his clipboard again. "Grass that is excessively green compared to neighboring lawns may constitute an aesthetic disruption under subsection." "Oh my God, stop talking!" He stopped, immediately. I wasn't sure whether to be relieved or frightened by his obedience. I tried reasoning first. "Gentlemen, you can't just camp outside someone's house until they apologize for something ridiculous." Guard 2 remained unmoved. "We can, actually. The HOA bylaws permit temporary positioning of security personnel during unresolved conflicts." "Temporary positioning?" I echoed. "Your tent has guidelines." Guard 1 gave a small smile. "We wanted to be prepared for a long day." "A long what? No. No. You can't stay here, I have work. Guard 2 turned slightly, revealing a cooler behind the table. It was labeled HOA rations. He tapped it proudly. We came prepared as well. I stared at the cooler. What's in there? Trail mix and power trip juice? Granola bars. Guard 1 corrected politely. Gluten-free. Of course they were. I stepped back and took in the whole scene again. The tent, the table, the cones, the guards who genuinely looked ready to die on this hill of unnecessary authority. My own front yard had become a bureaucratic war camp. I rubbed my temples. Okay, one last question. If I don't apologize, what's the or else? Guard 1 straightened again. Then we escalate the matter. To who? The HOA board? Karen's book club? He didn't answer. Instead, both men exchanged a meaningful nod, the kind people make when they're about to do something profoundly stupid with absolute conviction. I sighed deeply, realizing this insanity wasn't going away on its own. It was shaping up to be the kind of day that made you question your life choices. The kind that made you wonder at what exact point your HOA had stopped being a neighborhood organization and started becoming a small, unusually petty dictatorship. As I stood there trying to figure out whether I should laugh, cry, or search for a lawyer who specialized in suburban madness, Guard 2 spoke up softly. For the record, sir, your grass really is suspiciously green. I stared at him, mouth open, and for the first time that morning, I felt something worse than frustration. I felt fear, because he was absolutely serious. By noon, the siege had evolved. What had started as a two-man HOA outpost had grown into what looked suspiciously like a full-fledged encampment. A battery-powered fan whirred lazily beside the tent, oscillating back and forth as if trying to cool the rising temperature of pure absurdity. A second cooler had appeared, this one labeled HOA Rations 2, and judging by the way Guard 2 patted it proudly, I suspected it contained nothing but identical gluten-free granola bars. They had lawn chairs now. Comfortable ones, the kind with built-in cup holders and those little side pockets people use to store crossword puzzles or emergency beef jerky. Guard 1 lounged in one of them with the demeanor of a man who had accepted that his life's purpose was permanently tied to my driveway. Guard 2 sat upright, eyes focused, scanning the street like a watchdog who had memorized every line of the HOA manual and was prepared to enforce it with zeal. I tried everything. Negotiation, look, can we talk about this like grown adults who don't need tents for conflict resolution? Reasoning, Karen is not the President of the United States. She cannot issue demands involving driveways. Bribery, if I give you both fresh-baked cookies, will you leave? The cookies had almost worked. Almost. Guard 2 took one, sniffed it, licked it, then regretfully handed it back as if returning contraband. Against protocol, he said, visibly pained. We can't accept gifts during an active enforcement situation. I stared at him. You licked it. He blinked. I needed to confirm flavor integrity. By this point, I was convinced the HOA had gone beyond micromanagement into something more insidious, suburban authoritarianism with snacks. I had just decided to try sneaking out through the backyard when I heard the sound of heels clicking against pavement. Sharp, confident, purposeful. The kind of sound someone makes when they're arriving not for a conversation, but a victory parade. And there she was, Karen, striding down the sidewalk with the smug poise of a woman who believed the world should bend to her will, or at the very least that the HOA should. She wore a crisp, floral blouse that somehow managed to look both stylish and judgmental at the same time. Her blonde hair was pulled into a bun so tight it had likely never known freedom. Trailing behind her was Mr. Pickles, her tiny dog, who wore a brand new vest that read Support Animal for HOA-related stress. Karen gave it a little tug every few steps, either to speed him up or to emphasize her point. She had arrived, and the show was about to begin. The guard snapped to attention as if the Queen herself had arrived. Guard 1 practically saluted. Guard 2 whispered something reverent under his breath, possibly a prayer or a direct quote from the HOA Code of Conduct. Karen reached my gate and folded her arms. The smile she gave me could have melted steel, not with warmth, but with passive-aggressive radiation. It was the kind of smile that said, I've been waiting for this moment. Well, 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 she drawled, tilting her head. I hear you have something you'd like to say to me. I stepped closer, hands in my pockets, staring at her across the flimsy barricade of orange cones. Oh, do I? The guards leaned forward, as if I were about to deliver a speech of profound importance. Karen primped a stray hair back into place. I understand you've been having some difficulty accepting responsibility for your actions. My actions, I echoed. You mean maintaining a lawn? An excessively green lawn, she corrected in a tone that suggested she was discussing a felony. Your grass is an eyesore. A violation. It undermines the uniform aesthetic of the neighborhood. It's grass, Karen. I gestured broadly at the offending greenery. Its goal in life is to be green. Yes, she said, sniffing in disdain. But not that green. I stared. She stared. Mr. Pickles stared, though only because he was constipated. I inhaled slowly, summoning what was left of my sanity after a morning spent dealing with grown adults who apparently thought they were the lawn police. And then I said it. Karen, I'm sorry. Her eyebrows rose triumphantly. She lifted her chin. Go on. I'm sorry, I continued, stepping closer still, that your life is so empty you have resorted to staging a full-blown hostage situation over my gardening skills. Guard 1 gasped so loudly he almost fell off his lawn chair. Guard 2 covered his mouth in shock. Mr. Pickles barked once, startled by the sudden spike in emotional volume. Karen's smile collapsed. Her jaw dropped open so suddenly I wondered if she might have dislocated it. You, she sputtered. You can't talk to me like that. Funny, I said, because I just did. She spluttered, red blotches forming around her neck. This is unacceptable. This is grounds for disciplinary action. From whom? I challenged. Your army of granola enthusiasts? Guard 2 quickly hid his half-eaten granola bar behind his back. Karen spun to address the guards, pointing dramatically. Did you hear him? Did you witness his verbal aggression? His insubordination? Guard 1 opened his mouth, then closed it. Guard 2 quietly started packing up the fan. We'll, file a report, Guard 1 said unconvincingly. You will do no such thing, Karen barked. You will maintain your post until he... But Guard 2 interrupted by folding up his lawn chair with the speed of a man who wanted no part of this conversation. Karen whirled on him. Where do you think you're going? He avoided her gaze. Our enforcement window has expired. What window? She demanded. The one where this still seemed like a good idea. And that was it. The guards packed up their camp, carefully collapsing the tent, loading the coolers and gathering the sad little cones, while Karen shouted behind them about responsibility, consequences, and the decline of neighborhood decency. Mr. Pickles peed on one of the cones. I leaned against my gate, arms crossed, watching the HOA retreat with a mixture of satisfaction and sheer disbelief. Karen stormed away in the opposite direction, her heels clicking angrily, her dog trotting behind as if embarrassed by association. As the guards reached the end of the street, Guard 2 turned back just long enough to call out softly, For the record, sir, your grass is suspiciously green. And despite everything, the madness, the cones, the tent, the gluten-free granola, I actually smiled. Because for once, someone in this neighborhood understood the importance of good grass.